Today, I'm really excited to be driving this thing. It's the BMW 128 Ti, and it's unlike any other BMW performance car because most of them are either rear-wheel drive or some of the newer ones are all-wheel drive, but this one is powered exclusively through the front wheels, and that's because it's targeting the Volkswagen Golf GTI, and the GTI should be worried because not only does it cost about the same and has a slightly more premium interior, it's also more powerful. But it's not all about power and luxury. What's this like as a car to drive? And is it worth the money? Well, we're about to find out. But before I get into the review, remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more awesome videos just like this one. So we're going to point out some of the design differences between the 128 Ti and the base car, and I kind of want to start off with the badge because Ti hasn't really been seen a lot on modern BMWs. In fact, the last time Ti was used was on the 325 Ti way back in the early 2000s, and it was based on a 3 Series compact. Now, what it means is Turismo Internazionale, which isn't exactly that German, but it was BMW's performance brand before M came along. So think of it as essentially a hot car that isn't a full M product. Although we still have the full M body kit around here with the diffuser and also fake vents at the side, they're not real. And we also have a spoiler at the back, although you can delete it if you want for that more subtle look. Speaking of subtle though, this is a bit of a giveaway. This red stripe down the side and also the TI sticker there as well. I'll admit, I really don't like this. I think it looks really quite cheap. Kind of reminds me of the old Citroen C1s of when they first came out. They wanted to make them really customizable so you could put different colored trim on them. If you're like me and you don't really like it, don't worry, you can delete it or have it painted in black if you want. And there are some other colors, so if you wanted it in blue or red, then that comes in black as standard as well with a black TI sticker. A bit further down, we've got 18-inch wheels as standard, but if you go on the configurator, there are 2 options for 18-inch wheels, and they look the same, but read a little bit closer and you'll see that one comes with Michelin Pilot Sport tyres. Now that's the one you want to go for, and it's a no-cost option. Don't really know why, because it's a much better tyre than the standard Bridgestones that these come on. The only difference I can really see is that it adds a little bit more to the car's CO2 figure, but it doesn't put it into a different tax bracket, so I don't really know why they don't come as standard. You can also upgrade to 19-inch rims if you want, but those allegedly don't come with the Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres either. At the front, this is a pretty typical M Sport front end. You also get this on the more powerful M135i, but you can also spec it on the 118i M Sport as well, so it isn't all that special, which is a bit of a shame. We do have red highlights at the front. Of course, you can get those in black if you don't like the red. There is a subtle difference though, is that if you go for an M135i, you actually have kind of like a mesh grille at the front, whereas on the 128 Ti, you have the more standard BMW grille, albeit in gloss black. Now, under the bonnet, we have a 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and it's the same one that you get in the M135i. It has, however, been down-tuned for obvious reasons. This isn't the range-topping 1 Series, so it produces a still very impressive 261 brake horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque. Now, that's sent to the front wheels only through an 8-speed automatic gearbox, and it'll get you from 0 to 62 miles per hour in 6.1 seconds, which is not super fast, but it's on par with its rivals like the Golf GTI and i30N. The only thing is though, is that the aforementioned cars also come with a manual gearbox, but you don't get one in the 1 Series, and BMW says that for it to pass emissions regs, the gearing would have to be really long, which I kind of get, but the Golf has it and the Hyundai has it, so why can't I get one, BMW? Now, alongside the engine upgrade, we also have some mechanical changes as well. The first thing that you'll notice are these gigantic red brake calipers. We do have bigger brakes on the 128 Ti, and I think they look absolutely fantastic. We also have a limited slip differential in there as well, because we're putting a lot of power through the front wheels. And that can sometimes induce torque steer, which is when you put your foot on the throttle and essentially there's so much power going through the front wheels that they start to move around on their own. And so what you actually get in the 128 Ti is the power assisted steering has actually been calibrated so that if you get torque steer, it'll counter steer for you, which sounds a little bit strange, and looking forward to seeing what that feels like on the road. Now, the dampers on here are 8% stiffer than what they are on the standard 1 Series, but they are passive. And that means that if you're driving along and you want to slacken the ride off a little bit, like you can do in something like a Hyundai i30N, unfortunately, you can't do it. So if it feels stiff, well, like it or lump it. So let's just jump straight into pricing. The 128 Ti costs just under £34,000, and that's pretty much the same as the Golf GTI and also the Hyundai i30N as well. However, the Golf is available with a manual gearbox as standard, and you can upgrade to a DSG, whereas in the BMW, we only get the auto. So if we want to compare apples to apples, you'll be looking at this versus the DSG Golf, and the DSG Golf costs £1,500 more than the manual car, so it's also a little bit more expensive. Now, yes, you can start adding options on as well. With the BMW, wireless charging, that's an optional extra. Head-up display, that's an optional extra too. And if you want a colour other than white, you'll be paying just over £500. But it's also the same story on the Golf GTI, so on both cars you can really go options crazy on the extras list. The interior of the 128 Ti won't really come as a surprise, it's pretty much standard 1 Series, and I've actually already done a full review of the new 1 Series. If you click the link in the top right hand corner, you get my impressions of the interior quality and also rear space and the boot. But there are some subtle differences with the 128 Ti. For instance, we've got Ti embossed on the armrest. We also have red stitching on the steering wheel. And if you went through the black seats, you'd get red stitching on there too. We've got the red leather though, so it comes in with this silver stitching instead. You've also got this kind of faux carbon fibre-ish looking panel on the dash and also at the side of the doors here, but that actually houses the ambient lighting, so it can be bathed in either a red or a blue glow. And you can also change the actual background colour of it, so in here it's more of a silvery base, but you can also get something that's a darker, kind of more black colour. Let's talk about interior quality, because this is really where the 1 Series just beats the GTI massively. Everything feels just a step above the Golf and also the Hyundai i30N, but the i30N really doesn't come close to the Golf either. So not only do we have a lot of leather around here, yes, it's an optional extra, but even the standard cloth kit is really very nice. Everything just feels like it's built better, and you also get proper physical buttons on the steering wheel, on the dashboard as well, with nice kind of metallic finishes too, so it feels more posh. But you also have a significantly better infotainment screen as well. I'm really not a big fan of the system that you get on the new Golf, and when it dominates the driving experience, it really does hold the GTI back. So in that respect, the 128 Ti is a cut above, even though it's just switched itself off. Only thing I'm not a big fan of in the 1 Series interior is the steering wheel. It's finished really nicely, but BMW do really chunky steering wheels, so it's the same in the 128 Ti as it is in the M4, as it is in the M8. They're just chunky and a bit bulky, and I much prefer what you get in a VW product. But that's about it really. On every other level, the 128 has the GTI beat. On board with the 128 Ti, BMW's not first front-wheel drive car, but certainly their first performance-focused front-wheel drive car. And it has some seriously stiff competition. The Golf GTI, if you want to watch my review of that, click the link in the top right-hand corner. We actually put it round a test track just to see what it was like when you're really pushing its limits. And it's also up against the Hyundai i30N as well. Both fantastic cars, and I think you might be able to add the 128 Ti to that list as well. I'll kick things off with the performance. Feels pretty damn rapid. Again, that 0 to 60 time of 6.1 seconds, I don't actually think it really kind of prepares you for how quick this feels. Sure, it's not quite Golf R fast or M135i quick, but it's not far off. And it also feels pretty damn front-wheel drive. I was just coming out of a roundabout there, launching onto a dual carriageway, foot flat to the floor, and you can definitely feel the front end just kind of biting into the tarmac. It does squirrel around a little bit as well, as it's trying to kind of find that traction and also cope with the amount of power and torque that's going through the front wheels. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the steering rack has been worked so that it tries to cancel out some of that torque steer. And it does an all right job, but it definitely feels much more torque steery than something like the Golf GTI, and especially the Hyundai i30N, which is pretty monstrous when it comes to getting rid of that. But in all fairness, I find that quite fun. It just kind of adds to the car's character. But that lively front end doesn't translate to a worse driving experience. Yes, it definitely feels like it's front-wheel drive, but it's definitely got quite a darty front end. And the steering system that you have in this 1 Series is just so good. It's not heavy and it's not brimming with feel. It's for people who are going to be after a hot hatch without going down the ultra extreme route of something like a Honda Civic Type R or a Megane RS. The ride is a bit of a mixed bag. Because we don't have adaptive dampers on here, you can't slacken off the ride if it gets a little bit too stiff. It just can feel a little bit more fidgety over some bumps. Not all the time. Most of the time it is absolutely fine. Cruising along the motorway or going down a bumpy road, it's usually fine, but there's just the odd instance of where it can just dither around a little bit. What I will say though is this 8-speed automatic, it feels a lot like it does in the new M3 and M4. In fact, if you click the link in the top right hand corner, you can watch my review of those two. Although they are a little bit different to the 1 Series, the gear change definitely feels very similar, of where it's a bit, I wouldn't say sluggish, it's just a bit characterless. There's no snapping through the gears or blips of the throttle when you're going down the gears. Sometimes it just feels best to just leave it in automatic mode. Now, I've been driving it in sport mode, and what that does is it gives me a slightly more responsive throttle pedal. There is a valve in the exhaust that does open and it makes it just a little bit more boomy. You can put it in individual mode, of where you can have some of those elements and not others, or you can put it in comfort, which quietens down the car quite a lot, or eco mode, which really does hold back some of the performance, but it does mean that you get to sip at fuel on the motorway. I've averaged kind of around 38 mpg. So let's not beat around the bush. Is this better than a Golf GTI? And I would say the strengths of the GTI is it feels a little bit more practical, a bit more spacious in the back. So if you're going to be using it as a family car and ferrying people around, then you might actually want to go for the GTI. But it's worth bearing in mind that the comparisons that I've been drawing with this and the GTI are the base GTI. There is also the GTI Club Sport. In fact, we drove that very recently. You can watch our review by clicking the link in the top right hand corner. So in that 33 grand price range that is so hotly contested with hot hatches but not the super hatches, I think it's the 128 Ti that comes out on top. Yes, it's missing the manual gearbox, but oh my goodness, in terms of performance and handling, this thing just feels like it's so much fun to drive. And I think partly one of the reasons why this is so good is because VW sort of dropped the ball with this generation of Golf GTI. If the next generation is even better, or they're going to rely on the Club Sport being the one to go for, then it might be a little bit closer between this and the Golf. But as it currently stands, if I had £33,000 burning a hole in my pocket before adding options, and I wanted a hot hatch, I think I'd go for the 128 Ti. It really is very good.